Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with something simple but powerful. You know, for years I watched people rush through their lives as if speed alone could guarantee success. Their phones are buzzing, their calendars are packed, their feet are always moving, yet when you sit them down and ask, what did all that activity lead to? The answer is often, not much. And that's one of life's great illusions, being busy. The illusion that motion must mean progress. But let me tell you something. I learned early you can run very fast in the wrong direction. And no matter how hard you run, if you're headed the wrong way, the finish line will not come any closer. Some people don't have a life problem, they have a direction problem. And that's far more dangerous. See, laziness is obvious, but false productivity, that one's tricky because it fools you. It pats you on the back and says, keep it up, you're doing something. And you feel good without ever getting anywhere. I used to meet folks who proudly said, Mr. Rohn, I'm busy from morning till night. And I'd say, that might be the trouble. Because if you're busy with the wrong things, you're not achieving, you're just occupied. There's a difference. A rocking chair moves all day long, back and forth, but the view never changes. Some people live their whole lives like that rocking chair. Lots of motion, very little progress. And here's the whole point of today's lesson. 7 habits that look productive, even feel productive, but quietly steal your time, your energy, and your potential. These habits disguise themselves as effort. They pretend to be discipline, but underneath, they're nothing more than detours wearing the costume of progress. Today, we're going to take those habits apart one by one. Not to criticize, not to condemn, but to replace the illusion with something real, something that actually moves your life forward. Because if there's anything I want you to remember from this first moment, it's this. Never confuse activity with achievement. Never confuse movement with progress. And never let busyness become the substitute for purpose. So let's begin our journey. Habit number 1, the one that traps more good people than almost any other, is the habit of saying yes to everything. Now, let's talk about the first habit, and I'll tell you, it's a subtle one. It doesn't look like a weakness. It doesn't sound like a flaw. In fact, people will praise you for it. They'll say you're so helpful, you're so dependable, you're always there for everyone, but if you're not careful, this one habit will eat up your entire destiny, one yes at a time. It's the habit of saying yes to everything. See, most people don't lose their future to one big catastrophe. They lose it to 1,000 small interruptions. 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, another quick favor, another small request, another can you help me with this? And before long, your whole day becomes a patchwork of other people's priorities. I learned something early. If you don't plan your own life, someone else will. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. Some folks spend their whole lives being useful, but never becoming valuable. Being available, but never being purposeful. They want to please everyone, help everyone, be liked by everyone, and in the end, they exhaust themselves serving every request except the one that truly matters, their own calling. Let me tell you what saying yes to everything really means. It means you're letting someone else write your schedule. Someone else choose your direction. Someone else sign your name to commitments you never approved. And here's what's worse. When you say yes to everything, you say no to the things that matter. No to your goals. No to your health. No to your reading. No to your craft. No to the quiet time you need to think, design, reflect. You trade your future for someone else's convenience. Now, I'm not telling you to stop helping people. No. Service is noble. Kindness is necessary. But listen carefully. Do not let generosity become the enemy of your goals. Help others, yes, but not at the cost of abandoning your own progress. Here's the rule I used to teach my students. Before you say yes, ask one simple question. Does this move me closer to where I've decided to go? If the answer is yes, wonderful. If the answer is no, politely decline. Wish them well. Encourage them. But protect your time, because your time is the only thing you cannot get back. You can lose money and earn it again. Lose opportunities and find new ones. but lose time and it's gone forever. So let me give you a new habit to replace the old one. Delayed, yes. Not immediate, yes. Not automatic, yes. Say, let me check my priorities. Say, let me see if it fits my plan. Say, I'll get back to you. That one moment of reflection might save you an entire day of regret. Ladies and gentlemen, your future deserves a selective yes and a powerful no. Now that we've cleared the first hurdle, let's move on to a bigger illusion, one that traps not just your schedule, but your entire life direction. The second habit, working hard without a written plan. Now, let's move to habit number 2, and this one, my friends, is a big one. I've seen countless hard-working people fall into this trap. They wake up early, stay up late, stay busy all day long, and yet, year after year, very little changes. Not because they lack effort. No, effort they have. What they lack is direction. And that's why Jim Rohn used to say, never start the day until you finish it on paper. You see, it's entirely possible to work hard, incredibly hard, and still go nowhere. Hard work is only virtuous when it is aligned. Hard work without a plan is like trying to build a house with no blueprint. Lots of noise, lots of motion, but no structure. No foundation. No finish line. Imagine a construction team showing up every morning without drawings, without measurements, without a single idea of where the walls go or how high the ceiling should be. They pick up the tools, they start hammering, sawdust flies everywhere, but at the end of the day, they've built nothing. And yet, they're exhausted. That's the tragedy. And how many people live exactly like that? Hammering, sawing, cutting, carrying, sweating, but never building. I used to ask people, show me your plan. And they'd say, Mr. Rohn, it's all in my head. Well, that's the trouble. If your plan lives only in your head, it will die there too. A plan must be written, visible, tangible, something you can hold in your hands. Why? Because writing turns wishes into targets, and targets into tasks, and tasks into achievements. Now, why does working without a plan feel productive? Because movement tricks the mind. Emotion tricks the heart. Activity creates the illusion of achievement. You tell yourself, look how hard I'm trying. But the question is not, how hard are you trying? The question is, where are you going? Because trying very hard in the wrong direction does not take you closer to success, it takes you further from it. Let me give you the truth in one sentence. A day without a plan is a day shaped by chaos. And chaos does not care about your dreams. So what's the replacement habit? Something simple? Something powerful? Just write out your day before it begins. Not a novel, a plan. 3 major priorities. 1 action that moves your long-term vision ahead. 1 commitment to personal development, reading, journaling, listening. That's enough to change the whole trajectory of your life. Because once you write something down, it becomes a contract, a commitment, a promise. And the more promises you keep with yourself, the more trust you build with yourself. And let me tell you, self-trust is one of life's greatest treasures. So remember, hard work is admirable, but directed hard work is transformational. Now, from plans, let's talk about something equally deceptive, a habit that's more common today than ever before, and that's the habit of consuming motivation instead of taking action. Now, this next habit is one of the most modern traps of all, and if we're honest, nearly all of us have fallen into it at some point. In fact, it's easier to fall into this one today than ever before in human history. It's the habit of consuming endless motivation instead of taking action. You see, inspiration is a marvelous thing. It can lift you up. It can open your mind. It can spark a new beginning. But inspiration was never designed to replace action. It was designed to trigger it. These days, people sit for hours watching motivational videos, listening to speeches, reading quotes, and the whole time they feel the surge of emotion, the spark of possibility, the warmth of I'm going to change everything tomorrow. But here's the danger. Emotion wears off faster than you think. I used to tell my students, don't let the inspiration of the moment fade into the inactivity of the day. Why does this habit feel productive? Because motivation creates a temporary satisfaction, a sense that you're doing something simply by being moved. But emotion alone doesn't plant a tree or build a business or strengthen a character. Emotion can open the door, but discipline must walk you through it. I remember talking to a young man who proudly showed me notebook after notebook filled with quotes, ideas, principles, lessons. He said, "Mr. Rohn, look how much I've learned." And I told him gently, "My friend, learning is wonderful. But remember, learning that isn't applied eventually becomes regret. You see, you can get addicted to inspiration. You can crave it like sugar. But if you don't act, if you don't translate that inspiration into behavior, you will end up motivated but unchanged. The goal isn't to feel inspired. The goal is to become inspired into action." So here's the replacement habit, and it's one that can change your life in 1 week. For every hour of motivation you consume, take one concrete action. Make the call, write the plan, send the email, read the chapter, clean the room, start the workout. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. Because the smallest action will always outperform the biggest intention. And here's the truth. Motivation without action creates fantasy. Action without motivation creates results. But motivation combined with action creates transformation. So don't stop learning. Don't stop listening. Don't stop seeking voices that make you better. Just remember that nothing changes until you change. And nothing moves until you move. Now that we've cleared that one, let's go to another habit that pretends to be productive, and that's the habit of trying to do everything at once. Now, let's move to habit number 4, and this one sounds impressive when people say it out loud. They say, "Mr. Rohn, I'm a great multitasker. I can do 10 things at once, and I always smile because I know what's coming next." They're doing 10 things at once, and they're doing all 10 of them poorly. You see, somewhere along the way, society decided that multitasking was a virtue, something to be proud of. But let me give you something to think about. The human mind was never designed for scattered attention. It was designed for focus, for depth, for presence. And that's why I used to say, wherever you are, be there. Be fully there. Not halfway, not partially, not with your mind bouncing around like a loose marble in a wooden box, but truly there, mind present, hands present, attention present. Why does multitasking feel productive? Because you're touching a lot of things. You're moving, switching, shuffling, switching again, and that switching creates the illusion of progress. But the cost of switching is enormous. Every time you change tasks, your focus resets. You lose momentum. You lose clarity. You lose depth. And the work that should take an hour now takes 3. It's like trying to water 10 plants with the same cup of water. 1 drop here, 1 drop there. None of them grow. But take that same water, pour it into one pot, and you'll see life take root. That's focus. That's discipline. That's how results are born. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a beam of light spread out across a room. You barely notice it. But take that same light, concentrate it, and it becomes a laser. So powerful, it can cut through steel. Not because the light changed, but because the focus changed. Here's the truth. Scattered effort produces scattered results. Focused effort produces miraculous results. So what's the replacement habit? It's something simple, but it requires courage. It's the habit of single tasking. One task, one block of time, one clear outcome. When you eat, eat. When you study, study. When you work, work. When you rest, rest. Give your full attention to what's in front of you. Not what you left behind. Not what you might do next, what's in front of you right now. Because when you give something your full mind, something remarkable happens. Your efficiency rises. Your stress falls. Your creativity sharpens. Your results multiply. And suddenly, you find you don't need 10 tasks at once because one well-executed task often replaces them all. Now, let's move to the next habit, one that many people misunderstand. They think they're being responsible, they think they're being organized, but they're missing the most important part of planning. I'm talking about planning once and never reviewing. Now let me take you to habit number 5, and this one looks responsible on the surface. It looks organized. It looks disciplined. Some people even feel proud of it. They say, Mr. Rohn, I made a plan at the beginning of the year. And I say, wonderful, but when was the last time you looked at it? And suddenly the room gets quiet. Because here's the truth. Most people don't fail because they don't plan. They fail because they don't review. They write a plan in January and never revisit it in February. They set goals on Monday and forget them by Thursday. They decide what they want for their life and then leave the steering wheel unattended. You see, a plan without review is like a map you never look at. You're traveling, yes, but you don't know whether you're getting closer or drifting further away. That's why I used to say, reviewing the past is what makes the future better. Not occasionally, not annually, not when you feel like it, consistently, intentionally, thoughtfully. Why does planning without review feel productive? Because you did something. You wrote something down. And for a moment, that feels like progress. But a plan that isn't reviewed slowly becomes irrelevant. Life changes. Circumstances change. You change. And if you don't check your direction regularly, you can drift without noticing. Think of a ship at sea. All it takes is a 1-degree deviation, tiny, almost invisible, and if the captain never checks the compass, that ship ends up hundreds of miles off course. Not because it was lazy, but because it failed to review. That's what happens to people who plan once and never revisit it. They drift. Quietly, slowly, until one day they look up and wonder, how did I get so far from where I intended to be? So what's the replacement habit? It's the weekly review ritual. Simple, practical, transformative. Every week, not every 6 months, take a few minutes and ask, what worked this week? What didn't work? What should I stop doing? What deserves more attention? What adjustments must I make? Small corrections made early prevent massive corrections made late. A weekly review is like tightening the bolts on a bicycle. The ride becomes smoother, the direction becomes clearer, the effort becomes more efficient. And suddenly, the progress that once felt so slow begins to accelerate. So let me give you a principle to carry with you. A plan creates direction. Review creates correction. And correction creates progress. Now, once you've made your plan and reviewed your plan, there's another trap, a habit just as dangerous as the others. And this one fools even intelligent, hardworking people. It's the habit of taking action with no measurement at all. Now, let's move to habit number 6, and this one is subtle but devastating. In fact, many people ruin decades of potential because of it. They take action, they move forward, they put in the effort, but they never measure anything. They say, Mr. Rohn, I'm working hard. And I say, wonderful, but tell me, how do you know you're improving? And again, the room gets quiet. You see, action alone is not enough. Activity alone is not enough. Effort alone is not enough. You need measurement. Something visible, something countable, something that keeps you honest. Because if you don't measure it, your mind will lie to you. Your emotions will deceive you. And your memory will exaggerate your progress. That's why I always taught, what gets measured gets managed. And what gets managed gets better. Why does taking action without metrics feel productive? Because you're moving, you're doing, and progress feels like it's happening whether it is or not. But without a scoreboard, you don't know if your actions are producing results or merely consuming energy. It's like planting seeds and never checking if anything is growing. It's like driving a car with no dashboard. It's like running a race with no finish line. You might be moving, but you're not achieving. And here's something important. People overestimate what they do once and underestimate what they do consistently. A young man once told me, Mr. Rohn, I'm reading a lot. I asked, how many pages last week? He said, I don't know. I said, then you're not reading. You're just remembering the feeling of being inspired. Measurement removes guesswork. Measurement removes excuses. Measurement reveals truth. Think of a farmer. A farmer doesn't just walk the field saying, I feel like the crops are doing well. No, he counts the rows, checks the leaves, measures the growth. Because the harvest depends on accuracy, not emotion. So what's the replacement habit? A simple tracking system, nothing fancy. Track what matters. Dollars earned, pages read. Workouts completed, miles walked, hours focused. Skill hours practiced. Content created, calls made, tasks completed, goals advanced. You don't need to track everything. Just track the things that move your life forward. And remember this, progress is often invisible until you measure it. Transformation is often slow until you track it. Success is often uncertain until you quantify it. Measurement builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds results. Now, there's one more habit, and this one might surprise you. Because it hides behind good intentions, it disguises itself as carefulness. It pretends to be thoroughness, but really, it's fear in a very clever mask. It's the habit of refusing to start until everything is perfect. Now, let's talk about habit number 7, and this one has stopped more dreams than failure ever has. It's the habit of waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect idea, the perfect plan, the perfect conditions, waiting for everything to line up before you take the first step. And I used to tell my students, you don't need enough wisdom to finish. You only need enough wisdom to begin. But some people never begin. They polish and prepare and perfect. And while they're preparing, life keeps moving. Opportunities keep passing. Time keeps shrinking. Why does perfectionism feel productive? Because you're busy. You're planning, analyzing, tweaking, refining. You're working on it, or at least it feels like you are. But perfectionism is just fear wearing a suit and tie. Fear pretending to be responsibility. Fear pretending to be intellect. You say, I need to make sure everything is right. But what you really mean is, I'm afraid to start. Afraid to be seen starting small. Afraid to be imperfect. Afraid to make a mistake. Afraid to be judged by someone who isn't even doing anything themselves. And here's the truth. People who wait for perfect never produce anything. Imagine trying to steer a parked car. You turn the wheel left, nothing. You turn it right, still nothing. You can turn the wheel all day long, but until the car moves, you're not going anywhere. And that's exactly what perfectionism is. A parked car with a moving steering wheel. The irony is that you can only improve after you start, not before, not by dreaming, not by polishing imaginary plans, not by thinking about thinking. You improve by movement, by trial, by learning, by adjusting, by taking the next step, even when you can't see the entire staircase. So what's the replacement habit? Start with what you have, where you are, with the knowledge you currently possess, and improve along the way. Start rough, start small, start imperfect, but start. I've seen people create extraordinary results from humble beginnings, simple plans, scribbled notes, cheap notebooks, borrowed resources. And I've seen others with every tool, every resource, every advantage achieve nothing because they were waiting for the perfect moment to begin. So let me give you this principle. The simple plan you execute beats the perfect plan you postpone. Every time. Your first attempt will not be your best. Your first version will not be your masterpiece. Your first step will not be your final step, but it will be the most important step you ever take. Because once you begin, you create motion. And once you have motion, you can correct. And once you correct, you can accelerate. And once you accelerate, life begins to change quickly. So remember, perfection is not your starting point. It is your reward for beginning. Now that we've uncovered all 7 habits, let's bring this entire lesson together and draw the final conclusion, the principle that ties everything we've discussed into a single, powerful message. Well, my friends, we've walked through quite a journey together. 7 habits that look helpful, feel productive, even sound admirable, but quietly rob you of your potential. Habits that create the illusion of progress while your real life, your goals, your purpose, your future waits patiently on the sidelines. Now, let me bring this home with one simple reminder. Never mistake movement for achievement. That's the principle that ties everything together. You can say yes all day long and still end the week with nothing meaningful completed. You can work hard from sunrise to sunset and still be standing in the exact same place. You can watch motivation, fill notebooks, and feel inspired and still never take a single step towards your dreams. You can juggle tasks, multitask, switch rapidly and dilute your brilliance until nothing gets your full power. You can make plans once a year and forget them and drift so slowly you don't even notice the direction you're going. You can take action with no measurement and tell yourself stories that aren't true. And you can wait for perfection and lose your entire future to hesitation. These habits aren't obvious enemies. They're gentle thieves, quiet thieves, the kind that sneak in through the back door and steal your years without making a sound. But now you know them, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. You can replace them. You can trade them for something better, something stronger, something worthy of your potential. So let me give you the Rohn formula, the antidote to illusion, the blueprint for real progress. 1. Protect your yes. Say yes with intention, not impulse. 2. Write your plan. A day unplanned is a day wasted. 3. Act before you feel ready. Let inspiration touch your schedule, not just your emotions. 4. Focus deeply. Wherever you are, be there. 5. Review consistently. The weekly review is where growth gets corrected and sharpened. 6. Measure honestly. Progress becomes visible when it's counted. 7. Start imperfect. Begin with what you have. Improve as you go. Follow this formula, and suddenly the fog lifts. Your days become productive, not just busy. Your actions become meaningful, not just emotional. Your progress becomes visible, not just hopeful. Your life starts to move, not in circles, but forward. And here's the final message I'd like to leave you with. Your future is not determined by chance. It is designed by choice. And the moment you take responsibility for your habits, the moment you decide to design your days instead of letting your days design you, that's the moment everything begins to change. So take these lessons, reflect on them, apply them, and turn them into disciplines. Not tomorrow, not one day, but today. Because today is the only day you can shape. And today is where progress begins.